Well, the suspect in the attack on House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul, is said to be arraigned today in a San Francisco court. David DePape was federally charged yesterday with attempted kidnapping and assault with intent to retaliate against a federal official by threatening or injuring a family member. He's also facing a number of state charges, including elder abuse and attempted murder. Officials say that they believe the attack was politically motivated and that he aimed to kidnap Speaker Pelosi. So, of course, the Speaker is a leading political figure, and we are days, a little bit over a week away from an election, an election. But some Republicans are actually mocking the attack, and they're casting doubt on its legitimacy. So for more on this, we want to bring in CBS News Homeland Security and Justice reporter Nicole Sganga and Annie Karni. She's a congressional correspondent for the New York Times. Both of you ladies, thank you so much for being here. I know that, the rhetoric can get hot and heated during election period, but this is a really serious crime, and it's surprising to hear some of the language that we've been hearing so far. But first off, let's just figure out where things are. Nicole, we talked about the suspect facing both federal and state crimes or state charges. Can you sort of tell us what the difference is?
Anne-Marie, the suspect here is expected to face a judge for the first time today during his initial arraignment. The San Francisco DA's office announcing a list of felony charges, state charges against the alleged assailant: attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, elder abuse, residential burglary, false imprisonment, and threatening the life or serious bodily harm to a public official. Now, for state charges, David DePape, if convicted, could face anywhere from 13 years to life in prison. Friday's violence has been deemed by authorities as politically motivated, as you pointed out, the suspect here allegedly targeting Speaker Nancy Pelosi. And that might sound obvious to our viewers, but it's important. It's the reason behind such swift federal charges. One count of assault of an immediate family member of a U.S. official and one count of attempted kidnapping of a U.S. official. Collectively, the accused here could face a maximum of 50 years in prison come sentencing on just the federal level.
So, Annie, you saw the criminal complaint. You read it. We got more details about what was being planned. What stood out to you?
Some of the weapons that he showed up with, zip ties. The one thing that really actually stood out to me is that he actually wielded the hammer and hit Paul Pelosi on the head with the hammer when the police were already on the scene in front of the police. So a lot of these charges were really grisly. Also, the premeditated nature. This wasn't a lot of Republicans talking about this since have been trying to tie it to the recent crime wave that has also been a central part of their midterm campaign message. But the planning that went into this, the looking for Nancy, the saying where's Nancy that echoed some of the language of the insurrectionists on January 6th, shows us that this was, this didn't happen in a vacuum. This was because of targeting her, because of things he had read online, conspiracy theories. And this was, very clearly not a violent incident related to a mass crime wave that the Republicans are trying to tie it to.
And, it's a serious crime, a serious incident. You would think it would be easy not to make light of this, but we've actually seen some Republican candidates and some Republicans making light of the attack. I want to play a little bit of what Carrie Lake had to say. She's she's a gubernatorial candidate in Arizona. She said this following a campaign event yesterday.
She's got protection when she's in D.C. Apparently her house doesn't have a lot of protection.
Nothing funny about that. Meanwhile, Donald Trump Jr., no surprise, has been sharing memes online mocking the attack. Nicole, is this representative of the rhetoric that we're seeing some Republicans use, and how dangerous is it?
Yeah, Anne-Marie, Republicans have offered a mixed bag. You mentioned Donald Trump Jr. Other Democrats have criticized his father, former President Trump's silence on this. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell and former Vice President Mike Pence were quick to condemn the violence. McConnell saying he was horrified and disgusted by Friday's events, Pence calling it an outrage. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy waited until Saturday to speak out publicly, calling it wrong, but also pointing to violence directed at others on the right. debate. Meanwhile, some have turned to politics. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene said she was praying for Pelosi, but called crime rampant in Joe Biden's America. Annie pointed to that. That sparked criticism from her Democratic colleagues, some who pointed to her previous comments on social media expressing support for executing the House Speaker. That line between vitriolic political rhetoric, one that the Speaker's no stranger to, and actual violence has been drawn not only by Democratic lawmakers, Anne-Marie, though, but also by law enforcement. And a joint intelligence bulletin released Friday from the Department of Homeland Security, FBI, and others warned government officials will likely remain attractive targets to domestic violent extremists around this election, especially those motivated by debunked claims of election fraud. And it's also a line that Republicans have been slow to connect or acknowledge. The more common criticism here being that lawmakers, particularly on the right, even with the outright condemnations of this attack, have not owned up to the ways in which heated political debate have contributed to the threat environment we're currently in. So, for example, U.S. Capitol Police documenting 9,600 direct or indirect threats in 2021 alone, what they are calling a sharp increase here.
Wow. And of course, we're hearing from some Democrats as well, many Democrats, but one in particular is California's governor, Gavin Newsom. He spoke to Major Garrett, and this is what he had to say about the incident.
I've seen the dehumanization of Nancy Pelosi. I don't think anyone's been dehumanized like she has consistently. I mean, I watched this one guy, was it Jesse Waters or something on Fox News, what he's been saying about Paul Pelosi the last 5-6 months, mocking him consistently. Don't tell me that's not aiding and abetting all this. Of course it is.
Aiding and abetting, Annie, it's an interesting phrase. Your response to what the governor had to say.
I mean, no question that for the better part of 2 decades, Republicans have tried to demonize and dehumanize Nancy Pelosi with sexist attacks, with making her this star. There's so much. I mean, you can see why. She's a liberal woman from San Francisco. She's the leader of her party, arguably the most powerful woman in Democratic politics. And, we, in the story we wrote on Monday, we found ads that the Republicans ran in 2006, that the RNC ran, that featured Nancy Pelosi's face in the middle, like staring in the middle of a barrel of a gun with blood running down the screen. It was a James Bond takeoff. But these violent images and messages have been part of the messaging to invigorate voters since 2006, and it's only gotten worse. And with Trump, it ratcheted up a level where, the left turned Nancy Pelosi into a sunglass wearing icon who took him on. And on the right, she became even more vilified. And then add to that the internet, and where she's a star of a lot of these QAnon conspiracy theories that we saw had inspired the attacker. And we get to the line between heated political rhetoric and a much more deadly game has been crossed. Now, you can't say that every comment, every time any politician says fire Pelosi, they have contributed to a deadly, violent, gruesome attack. But this attack didn't happen in a vacuum, and we've seen her being vilified and turned into some sort of monster to people watching on the right for the better part of 2 decades.
Yeah. Nicole and Annie, thank you so much.
Thank you.